Welcome, everyone. This is the Living Systems Art and Design Collaboratory Spotlight Series. My name is Lisa Naugle. I'm a choreographer and a faculty member, professor at the University of California, Irvine in the dance department. The event that you're watching right now is sponsored by the Buckminster Fuller Institute, the Design Science Studio, habRitual Studio, and the University of California, Irvine Emergent Media and Design Lab. Today, and right now, we have a wonderful presenter, Whitney Schmanski, who will be presenting really interesting topics that I'm not going to go into because I know Whitney has just so much to say, but I will introduce her bio. Whitney is a collaborative performer, choreographer, and movement educator. She enjoys sharing her love of dance and movement in theaters, classrooms, cinematic forms, and in nature. She is enthusiastic about exploring the profound connections between the mind and body, especially within the realms of science, somatics, and storytelling. She began her dance training in Utah and later studied at the San Francisco School of the Arts Conservatory of Dance and graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Juilliard School in New York City. She is currently pursuing her master's in fine arts in the dance department at UC Irvine with the support of the Leo Friedman Foundation Scholarship. Her performing career is very extensive. She has had the opportunity to perform with renowned and well-known international choreographers such as Kyle Abram, Brian Brooks, Camille Brown, the works of Merce Cunningham, Elliot Feld, Jerry Killian, and many, many others. And she has also danced with Brian Brooks, just many, many others. She's got an amazing career. She's also a certified instructor with gyrotonic and gyrokinesis and the Franklin method and Pilates. So her work that you'll see right now embraces many of those experiences, and we're so happy to have you today, Whitney. So take it away, Whitney.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just want to start out by giving thanks to be a part of this collaboratory. It's been quite an amazing, 4-ish months. And I will introduce you to my project, which is primarily a reflection of this time. So I began when entering into the collaboratory, there was a lot of this there was a lot of this linear thinking of, oh, I have to produce a project. It has to, there was kind of all this pressure that started to instill in me. And though I was super, super, super inspired by the Living Systems philosophy, and what this all kind of has turned into is this project that I am calling Dancing with Abundance. And it is essentially a culmination of a work in progress, a reflection of the last 4 months. And I started to realize that, within all the curriculum of talking about chaos, fractal, network theories, all in unison of the self-organizing living systems that we have been talking about, I've realized that over the course of these months, my way of understanding the information was through embodiment. And by embodiment, I primarily mean moving and getting outside and taking walks every day. I started to pick up my camera and became obsessed with the systems I started to see in the world. So this is kind of a reflection of all that. And here's just an intro, but I will start with sharing some reflections. I started to do a lot of movement studies within nature and with the primary goal of listening to the environment and my intuition, and kind of processing and seeing all that's around me. So I'm going to share just a few little clips here. And I'll jump to another one here. So these are all improvisational studies, not very much pre-planned, and I will be adding more to the site. The site is called abundancing.life. And yeah, they are really kind of raw studies, so none of it is choreographed, or I could say there's a little bit of compositional elements in like the framing and what I'm wearing and how I'm kind of approaching the environment. For example, the fact that it's very foggy in this one and kind of what emotional elements that instills in me. And alongside movement, I have been really delving into more photography as a visual language. And so here's just some of a collection of what I've been noticing in nature and how a lot of these living systems ideas are really showing up, and how I can see them in these tiny little instances of, you know, how light is shining through something, how one flower that's decaying and falls on another, all these little details, they all are like the purest example of that we live in this, you know, self-sufficient living world if we take care. So if, you know, these plants have the means necessary of sunlight and water and essentially an environment that helps them flourish. And also there's trees within concrete, and they have just a tiny bit of little dirt, and it's just amazing to see how persistent they are, I would say, to life. So these are some examples. I've noticed like a lot of different spirals and how those are really natural. There's not a lot of straight lines that I've been noticing, though they do happen. And another part of this aspect of this time has been this natural occurrence of collaborations and connections with new collaborators and friends that I have reconnected with. And here is one of the projects. This is Matthew Betlick. He is located in Rochester, Massachusetts. And we have this project that we're calling right now Open Articulations, where I am here in Southern California. And we've done a few different projects, but one of them being that we take a daily walk and we kind of reflect and through audio or photography or video. And we've kind of had this dialogue back and forth, and which has kind of helped us have this perspective or influence our perspective in our environments. So it's a very much kind of reflection of how we are seeing the systems around us. And then this other one is improvisational bass. So he's playing a hang drum here. And this video is compiled together, but I am essentially in this recording hearing a live stream of his audio and recording at the same time. And I'm just going to share a little bit of this. So again, this is a lot to do with listening and improvisation.
Are you still there?
That was the end of that. So we're doing multiple locations, and that project is evolving as well. And this is another project that I've started with a friend of mine who we've talked every single day during this time, probably for a year. And our conversations are essentially everything to do with living systems and paying attention to our world and what we're seeing and what we're noticing. She is an amazing writer. So this is a very quick, so these projects are, they're not very, this is again improvised, and we will be doing more of these, but essentially it's her voice of a poem, and I will play that.
If the clouds can shapeshift and keep their impeccable formation, so can I. The way they move across the sky as they are supposed to, it feels relevant to the change I am going through. A body that has the courage to transform, to live in the moment, to appreciate the beauty. Where else could we get such an idea as this? The crows flock together, sometimes in 2, 3, or 4, as they always leave their wings ahead of them, knowing what is coming. The sky opens up for them as it has for you and me time and time again. It opens for us as the sun beats down and loves us with his rays. It is a system of things, not a world to defeat, but to love and play in. It really is supposed to be heaven on earth.
So I'll just come back to this page here. So again, this is a work in progress reflection, and I see it continuing with integrating specific system philosophy ideas and reflections, more writing. So I see myself adding more writing and poetry and whatnot, combining all these elements. And there have been, again, like I mentioned, a lot of collaborations that are starting essentially. There's been a lot of people. I've just noticed that a change in my thinking has attracted other people back to me, and this need to kind of create and connect all along these ideas of instilling curiosity and wonder and seeing the beauty in our world in order for us to kind of make decisions on how we see our future. and how we can recognize how we can be a part and contribute to this living system that we live in, of our world and of the universe. And, you know, how can we be an example as artists to go out into our world and find this sense of wonder, and how can we use art? I'm trying to figure out how can I use my mediums of movement and kind of visual language to share what I see, and therefore encourage people to, you know, possibly see the tree that they see every day or out their window, and how they can kind of approach it with curiosity. And also there's all sorts of the fractal science and everything that contributes to all of that. It's interesting for me to kind of just accept that this is more of a nonlinear approach and a way of existing. I do feel supported by my experiences, and it still feels interesting to me that I don't have, it doesn't feel like I have this finished project or whatnot that I'm like delivering or anything, but it's much more of a sharing of kind of this transformation that's been happening. So, yes, thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So I think I'd like to start with asking questions maybe around nature, this language of nature.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how you were listening, and there were spirals. You observed spirals. Would you say that spirals are kind of the language, one of the kind of pieces of language of nature? And with that, would you say that there's other patterns and cycles of nature that you study? In thinking about patterns and the influence of nature, did it change your movement in any way? Did it influence how you moved and when you moved?
Yeah, so thank you for these great questions. I definitely feel that spirals have been revealing themselves a lot visually in what I see, and then also in my movement. And it kind of comes from listening from whatever ground I'm on and how there's energy spiraling up. And I would say what's been really revealing as well is this essence of repetition. And, you know, we, as artists, we all talk about this kind of like flow state. And I would say that for me in these studies has really been, you know, taking off. I don't know what this looks like. There's, no preconceptions of that, and then just like being held by nature, like feeling supported by what I'm receiving and what I'm allowing to kind of come up. One of before I lose this thought, one of with my collaborator Matthew, we had this discussion of, it's been a wonderful time to I guess perform in nature, because it's almost like the biggest stage in a way, even if no one's around. And it's also the most kind of supported place to be. And that's something that I've really experienced. And as far as nature changing my movement, yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely, especially with doing a lot of movement around the water and the waves, the ocean is like, has its life of its own, and how the sound and sometimes the tide, the current, can really energetically or physically come up to meet me. And I guess all of the footage I have there on the site right now has to do with the tides and the rhythms of the tides as well. And yes.
Yeah, so that brings up a couple of other questions that I was thinking about as you were presenting too, regarding boundaries. The fog sort of has its place, and it comes, and it has boundaries in the sand and the water, and the images. Especially, this came up when you were showing the images on your site, that there's form and it looks like there's boundaries around each thing. But considering the awareness that you were opening up to and the listening, if you were to redraw, could you redraw those boundaries in a way so that they aren't just the form, see them, but they actually are more than the form, that the boundaries are maybe less than, or they're not what you thought they would be, or they've shifted in some way, that your perception has shifted and boundaries aren't what you thought they were? Is there anything in there that you could speak to?
Yeah, definitely. I feel as a movement artist, as a dancer, training, we're training ourselves to be this kind of entity, and like we are kind of getting to know our container of our body and honing it. And usually we're in studios and theaters, and in these, very rarely have I've always loved playing outside and dancing in nature, but not to this extent during this time. And what I find has been really interesting is, being in grad school, being inside and being on a computer almost entirely all day, and how if I just step outside for 2 minutes and I see the trees, I receive nature, how that the boundary between the container of my body and the outside world is immediately affected. And that's really, really been apparent for me. And then also with looking at images and looking at nature and flowers and seeing how there's a lot of complexity that's happening, and they can all be, the plants and all the flowers, they can all be intertwined and have their different processes. So like some will be just blooming, while some will be dying, and they're all layered on top of each other. But each of its own has its own container, I would say. But that I'm noticing, less of a boundary, especially energetically, when I'm like trying to, or allowing myself to attune to everything around.
And is that a result, do you think, in greater part to this experience you've had with Living Systems Collaboratory, and is that connected for you?
Definitely. Yeah, I feel that throughout my life, I've noticed these things, or have been sensitive to nature and energies, and kind of how things are all connected. And the science of living systems, or systems philosophy, really kind of grounds that and puts a container or a language for it to kind of be loosely held, right? It's not like constricting anything, but it's grounding these ideas in language and thoughts, and how we can all communicate with the same vocabulary and terminology, and take it all these different directions, just like the other collaboratory participants have. So I definitely pay credit to that it's kind of allowed this door to open up. And it's a real thing. Oh, this is what I noticed. Like, oh, wow, there's science on this, and I think that I'm really drawn to how we can prove or question things, especially energetically, because I've been in the world of more so arts focused, right? But kind of combining the scientific frameworks for that.
Fantastic. Well, I certainly look forward to seeing more of your work and talking with you further, what you've done so far, especially with your collaborator, all the together, that common ground that you've shared, even though it's been great distances. Everything is really working well, and I congratulate you on your project, and especially looking forward to seeing more and hearing more and learning more from you.
Thank you.
So we're going to thank you so much, Whitney. Yes. And for those of you, again, who are just tuning in, this event is part of Living Systems Art and Design Collaboratory, sponsored by Buckminster Fuller Institute, Design Science Studio, habRitual Studios, and University of California, Irvine. This is our spotlights that you've been watching, and it's part of Regenera Rising. That is a development from the Buckminster Fuller Institute and Design Science Studio. We appreciate you watching, and thank you so much. Continue to join us for the rest of the presenters. Thank you.